The shadow in the photographs. A photographer starts noticing a shadowy figure in the background of his pictures. As he investigates, the figure gets closer and more defined with each photo, revealing disturbing details about his past. August 2015, Coastal Town, USA. The first time I noticed the shadow, it was nothing more than a smudge, a mere imperfection in an otherwise immaculate landscape shot. I remember the day vividly. It was a warm August afternoon, the kind where the sun hangs lazily in the sky and the sea whispers secrets to the shore. I, David Thompson, a man of 30 with an unremarkable life but a remarkable passion for photography, was out capturing the mundane beauty of our small coastal town. My studio, a quaint, cluttered space filled with the aroma of developing chemicals and aged paper, was my sanctuary. It was here, under the soft buzz of fluorescent lights, that I first spotted it, a vague, shadowy figure lurking in the background of a photo I had taken at the local pier. I leaned closer, my eyes squinting behind my glasses. It could have been anyone, a passerby caught inadvertently in my frame, but something about it felt off. The figure was too indistinct, almost blurred, as if it were not entirely there. I shrugged it off as a trick of the light or a fault in my camera. After all, equipment does wear down, and I had been using the same camera for years. But as days turned into weeks, the shadow kept appearing, each time a bit clearer, a bit more defined. It showed up in different locations, always in the background, always just a fragment of its potential self. At first I was intrigued, then unnerved. I switched cameras, even borrowed one from a fellow photographer, but the shadow persisted. It was as if it was not in the camera but in the world itself, following me, attaching itself to my life's work like a silent, uninvited companion. Its presence in my photographs became a constant, a dark whisper in the back of my mind, a riddle begging to be solved. Curiosity turned into obsession. I began poring over my older photographs, delving into my archives. That's when the chill ran down my spine. The shadow had been there for months, maybe longer, slowly coming into focus. It was like watching a specter materialize, frame by frame, across the timeline of my life. I couldn't explain it, nor could I ignore it. One night, as I sat surrounded by scattered photographs, a startling realization hit me. I dug out an old family album, its pages yellowed with age, and began flipping through it. My heart pounded in my chest as I saw it. A similar shadowy figure, present in the background of my childhood photos. It was there, at my 6th birthday party, at a family picnic, even at my high school graduation. How had I never noticed it before? I felt a cold sweat form on my brow. The shadow wasn't just a recent anomaly. It had been a part of my life since the beginning. What did it want? Why me? The questions swirled in my head, each more unsettling than the last. I couldn't sleep that night, the shadow haunting not just my photographs but now my thoughts, an enigma wrapped in darkness. The next morning I decided to confront my past. I needed answers, and there was only one place where I might find them. The old family property, a dilapidated house on the outskirts of town, long abandoned and shrouded in mystery. It was a place we seldom spoke about, a chapter of our family history that seemed deliberately forgotten. As I drove to the house, the familiar landscape morphed into something ominous. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their shadows longer and darker, as if echoing the presence that had infiltrated my life. The house itself stood as a silent sentinel, its windows like vacant eyes, its walls holding secrets of a past I was about to unearth. Little did I know, as I stepped into the house, that I was stepping into a world where the lines between the seen and unseen, the known and unknown, were about to blur irreversibly. The journey into the heart of the shadow had begun. Hey, quick reminder, don't forget to subscribe and like for more videos. The old family house loomed before me like a relic from a forgotten era, its weathered walls and overgrown garden bearing witness to years of neglect. As I pushed open the creaking gate, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The whispers of the past seemed to rustle in the leaves, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay. Stepping inside, I felt as if I had crossed into a different realm. Dust motes danced in shafts of light that pierced the gloom, illuminating fragments of a life long abandoned. The house was a tomb of memories, each room telling a story of the family I thought I knew, but now realized I didn't understand at all. I made my way through the dim corridors, my footsteps echoing eerily. In the living room, faded photographs adorned the walls, their subjects staring back with hollow eyes. There, amidst the portraits of smiling relatives, was the shadow, barely discernible, but undeniably present. A chill ran down my spine. The entity in my photos was not a recent phenomenon. It was a legacy, a part of my family's history. Driven by a need to uncover the truth, I scoured the house for clues. In the dusty attic, amidst forgotten trinkets and cobwebbed furniture, I found it, a collection of old journals and letters, yellowed with age. They belonged to my great-grandfather, a man whose existence had always been shrouded in mystery. As I pored over the journals, the story began to unfold. My great-grandfather had been involved in the occult, delving into realms beyond the understanding of most. He spoke of a guardian spirit, a protector who watched over our family. But his writings hinted at something darker, a pact made that bound this entity to us, not just as a guardian but as a watcher, a keeper of a secret so profound and terrifying that it was never fully revealed in his notes. The more I read, the more I felt a connection to this shadowy figure. It wasn't just a random occurrence, it was a part of me, tied to my bloodline. I was determined to understand the nature of this pact and what it meant for my family. I continued my investigation, reaching out to anyone who might have knowledge of my family's past. I spoke with distant relatives, local historians, and even dabbled in genealogical research. But the answers were elusive, buried deep within layers of time and secrecy. The shadow, once a mere curiosity, had become an obsession. I saw it everywhere, in the street corners as I passed by, in the background of strangers' photos, in the dim corners of my dreams. It was as if by acknowledging its existence, I had given it power, allowed it to seep further into my reality. Then, one evening, as I sat in my studio surrounded by the photographs, I felt a presence. It was more than just the sensation of being watched. It was as if the air around me had thickened, charged with an unseen energy. I looked up, and there, in the very room with me, was the shadow. No longer confined to the photographs, it stood in the corner, a dark, hooded figure, its form clearer than ever before. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. This was no longer a quest for answers. It was a confrontation with something inexplicable, something ancient and powerful. The shadow seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, and in that moment, I knew that my journey had taken a turn into the unknown. I was no longer the observer. I was part of the story, a chapter in a tale that spanned generations. As fear mingled with fascination, I realized that to understand the shadow, I had to delve deeper into the darkness of my family's past. I had to uncover the secret at the heart of the pact, a secret that I feared would change everything I knew about myself and the world around me. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but I was determined to follow it, wherever it might lead. In the weeks that followed, my life became a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. The entity, now a constant presence in my life, seemed to be guiding me, leading me towards a truth I was both desperate and terrified to uncover. Its silent vigil in the corners of my studio became a nightly occurrence, a spectral sentinel watching over my quest. I delved deeper into my great-grandfather's journals, deciphering cryptic references and piecing together a narrative that spanned decades. He spoke of a ritual, one that would bind the guardian spirit to our family, ensuring prosperity and protection. But every pact has its price. The more I read, the more I realize that this entity wasn't just a protector. It was a keeper of balance, a force that demanded something in return for its vigilance. Armed with this knowledge, I knew where I needed to go. Back to the old family house, the epicenter of my family's mysterious past. The night was moonless, the darkness almost tangible as I made my way through the overgrown path to the house. The air was thick with anticipation, and the shadows seemed alive, writhing and twisting around me as I approached. The house stood silent, a monolith in the darkness. I entered, my flashlight piercing the gloom. In the heart of the house, in the very room where my great-grandfather had conducted his rituals, I found the altar. It was an ancient stone table, covered in arcane symbols and dark stains that spoke of long-forgotten ceremonies. I set up my camera, determined to document what I was about to do. Drawing from the descriptions in the journal, I began the ritual. It was a chant, a calling to the entity, an invitation to reveal itself and its purpose. The words felt heavy in my mouth, charged with a power that seemed to resonate with the very walls of the house. As I spoke, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. The entity emerged, its form more defined than ever, a silhouette of darkness in the flickering light of my flashlight. It was a figure cloaked in shadows, its features indistinct, but its presence unmistakable. I could feel its gaze upon me, penetrating and all-knowing. I continued the chant, my voice growing stronger. The entity began to move, circling the altar, its form blurring and shifting. I felt a connection, a tether that stretched back through the generations, linking me to this ancient guardian. It was as if the house itself was breathing, the walls echoing with the whispers of my ancestors. Then, in a moment of unearthly stillness, the entity stopped. It stood before me, and I felt its gaze pierce through me. A flood of images filled my mind, memories not my own. I saw my ancestors, their lives intertwined with this shadowy guardian. I saw the moments of joy and sorrow, the choices they made, the price they paid. The truth was overwhelming. The pact my great-grandfather had made was not just for protection, it was for power, for knowledge beyond the realm of the living. But such power came at a cost that was now my burden to bear. I understood then that this entity, this guardian, was bound to my family not just by a ritual but by blood. It was a part of us, a manifestation of our ambition, our desires, our darkness, and I, as the last of my line, was its final keeper. The climax of my journey was not a confrontation, but an acceptance. I was not just uncovering the past, I was embracing my legacy, a legacy of shadows and secrets. The entity, my family's guardian, was now my responsibility, a responsibility I could not escape. As the ritual ended, the entity faded into the darkness, but its presence remained, a constant reminder of the pact that bound us. I left the house with a newfound understanding, a purpose that transcended my own existence. The shadow in the photographs was no longer a mystery. It was a part of me, a symbol of a legacy that I had to uphold. The days following the ritual were a blur of introspection and revelation. The entity, now an acknowledged part of my being, lingered at the edges of my consciousness, a silent observer to the tumultuous sea of thoughts that crashed within me. It was as if I had awoken from a long slumber, only to find myself in a world shaded in hues of gray, where every whisper of the wind, every creak of the floorboards, echoed with the legacy of my forebears. I returned to my studio, but the photographs I once cherished now seemed like windows into a realm I had unwittingly been a part of all my life. The shadow, my familial sentinel, no longer appeared in them. Its absence was as profound as its presence had been, leaving behind a void that was filled with the weight of history and the burden of understanding. Compelled by a need to reconcile with my newfound truth, I sought out the help of a local historian, Mrs. Langley, whose knowledge of the town's lore was as deep as the roots of the ancient oaks that lined its streets. In her wisdom, I found context. She spoke of legends and tales, of families bound to forces beyond the mundane, of pacts made in whispers under moonless skies. My family's story was but a thread in a tapestry of the town's hidden history. Alongside Mrs. Langley, I delved deeper into the esoteric aspects of my great-grandfather's practices. We uncovered old tomes in the town library, pored over archaic texts that spoke of guardianship and spiritual bonds. It was a path of discovery, one that brought clarity to the murky waters of my lineage. But knowledge alone was not enough. The entity's presence was a constant reminder of a pact that demanded balance. I turned to a medium, Madame Alara, a woman of enigmatic presence, whose eyes seemed to pierce the veil between worlds. With her guidance, I embarked on a journey to confront the entity, not as a specter of the past, but as a presence in my present. We held a séance in my studio, the very place where the shadow had first revealed itself to me. Madame Alara's chants filled the room, her words weaving through the air like threads of silver. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and the air grew thick with anticipation. It was then that the entity materialized, its form coalescing from the shadows like mist rising from a lake at dawn. Its presence was overwhelming, a maelstrom of emotions and memories that swirled around me, threatening to pull me into its depths. Madame Alara's voice was a lifeline, anchoring me to reality as I faced the entity. I spoke to it, not with words, but with thoughts, with feelings that flowed from the deepest wellsprings of my soul. I acknowledged its presence, its purpose, and, most importantly, the responsibility that was now mine to bear. The entity responded, not in words, but in a flood of understanding. It revealed its nature, not as a malevolent force but as a guardian of balance, a keeper of a pact that was as much a blessing as it was a curse. It had watched over my family, guided us, protected us, but at a cost that was etched into our very souls. As the séance concluded, the entity faded, but its departure was not a goodbye. It was an acknowledgement, a silent agreement that our paths were forever intertwined. I was left with a sense of peace, a tranquility that came from understanding my place in the grand tapestry of life and death. In the aftermath, I found solace in my art. The photographs I took now held a different meaning. They were no longer just images captured on film. They were expressions of a legacy that I had come to embrace. The shadow might no longer appear in them, but its essence was there, in every frame, a reminder of the unseen forces that shape our lives. The journey that had started with a smudge in a photograph had led me to the heart of my family's mystery, and in doing so, had redefined my understanding of the world around me. I was no longer just David Thompson, the photographer. I was a keeper of secrets, a guardian of a legacy that spanned generations, a legacy that I would carry forward into the shadows and the light. In the calm that followed the storm of revelations, my life settled into a new rhythm, one that beat to the quiet drum of hidden truths and silent guardianship. The entity, my ancestral sentinel, no longer manifested in the physical realm, but its presence was a constant undercurrent in my life, a silent companion in the dance of light and shadow. I returned to my photography with a renewed sense of purpose. My studio, once a haven of solitude, now resonated with the echoes of a deeper understanding. The photographs I took were different. They held a profundity that transcended mere imagery. Each frame was a testament to the journey I had undertaken, a narrative captured in the interplay of light and darkness. As the days grew into weeks, I began compiling my experiences into a manuscript. The words flowed from me like a river, carrying the weight of history and the whisper of secrets long kept. It was a story of discovery, of a legacy interwoven with the supernatural, a tale that blurred the lines between the known and the unknown. The book, when it was completed, was more than just a memoir. It was a confession, an acceptance of the role I had inherited. I titled it, The Shadow in the Photographs, a nod to the catalyst that had set me on this path. The decision to share my story was not made lightly. I knew that to some, it would be nothing more than a fanciful tale, a photographer's imaginative musings. But to others, those who had glimpsed the veil that separates our world from the mysteries beyond, it would be a beacon, a validation of their experiences. The day of the book's release was a culmination of all that had transpired. I held a gallery exhibition alongside the launch, displaying the photographs that had started it all. The images, devoid of the shadow but rich with its essence, drew a crowd, their eyes reflecting the myriad of emotions that danced across the frames. As people milled around the gallery, I saw in their faces a range of reactions: skepticism, curiosity, awe, and for a few, a knowing glint of recognition. My story, told through words and images, had begun its journey into the world, and with it, a part of me. In the weeks that followed, I received letters and messages from individuals who had read my book. Some were from skeptics, challenging my claims, but many were from souls who had felt the touch of the supernatural in their lives. My story had reached them, offering comfort, understanding, and in some cases, the courage to face their own shadows. I realized then that my journey was not just about uncovering my family's past or understanding the entity that guarded us. It was about bridging the gap between the seen and the unseen, about bringing to light the shadows that dwell in the corners of our existence. As the initial flurry of attention waned, I found myself in a place of quiet contentment. The studio was once again a place of peace, a sanctuary where I could commune with my art and, in a way, with the entity that was now a part of me. I continued to take photographs, each one a celebration of the beauty that lies in the balance of light and shadow. I ventured into new projects, exploring themes of heritage, legacy, and the unseen forces that shape our lives. In my heart, I carried the knowledge of the guardian spirit, a constant reminder of the unseen threads that weave through our lives. I had embraced my legacy, not as a burden, but as a gift, a unique connection to the mysteries of the world. As I look back on the journey that led me here, I realized that the resolution I sought was not in the answers I found, but in the acceptance of the role I was destined to play. In embracing the shadows, I had found my light, a light that I would carry forward into the unknown paths that lay ahead. The world continued its relentless march forward, seasons changing, years passing. Yet within the walls of my studio, time seemed to stand still, suspended in a realm where the past and present merged into a singular narrative. My journey with the entity had become a part of me, a chapter in my life that continued to echo in the quiet moments of reflection. As the fame of my book and gallery waned, a serene normalcy settled over my life. I found solace in the ordinary, the everyday moments that, when viewed through the lens of my experiences, shimmered with a subtle magic. My photography evolved, no longer just a pursuit of passion, but a medium of exploration, delving into the realms of light and shadow, the seen and unseen. One evening, as I sat in my studio, sifting through a collection of recent photographs, a sense of nostalgia washed over me. The images, while captivating, lacked the mysterious allure of the shadow that had once graced them. It was a reminder of a time when my life was enshrouded in mystery, a period that, despite its challenges, held a certain enchantment. In those quiet hours, I often found my thoughts drifting back to the entity, wondering about its origins, its purpose, and its continued presence in my life. It was a silent guardian, its existence now a subtle whisper in the back of my mind, a gentle nudge when decisions weighed heavily on my heart. The impact of my story had reached far beyond the confines of my small coastal town. Letters continued to arrive, some seeking advice, others simply sharing their own encounters with the inexplicable. It was a reminder that my experience was not an isolated phenomenon, but part of a larger tapestry of human encounters with the unknown. One letter, in particular, caught my attention. It was from a young woman, a photographer like myself who had stumbled upon a shadow in her photographs. Her words echoed my initial confusion and fear, a mirror to my past. She wrote of a figure, elusive and enigmatic, that appeared in her work, a presence that both intrigued and unnerved her. I pondered over her letter, feeling a kinship with this stranger. It was as if the entity had moved on, finding a new subject for its inscrutable purpose. The thought was both comforting and disquieting. Had my journey with the entity come to an end? Or was this simply another phase in an ongoing saga that spanned generations? The realization that the entity's presence in my life was part of a larger cycle was both humbling and enlightening. It was not bound to me alone. It was a guardian of a legacy, a custodian of a story that was larger than any single individual. As I continued my work, my photographs became a dialogue between the present and the past, a canvas where memories and possibilities intertwined. The studio, once a crucible of supernatural discovery, was now a haven of creative expression, where the echoes of the entity's presence inspired a deeper exploration of the human experience. In the quiet twilight of my career, I often found myself gazing out of the studio window, watching the interplay of light and shadow as the day gave way to night. It was in these moments that I felt a profound connection to the world around me, a sense of being part of something vast and mysterious. The journey I had embarked upon years ago had not ended. It had merely transformed. The entity, my ancestral guardian, had shown me a path that intertwined the ordinary with the extraordinary, the seen with the unseen. It had taught me that in the shadows of our lives lie stories waiting to be told, mysteries waiting to be unraveled. As I write these final words, I am reminded that our stories are not just our own. They are part of a continuum, a narrative that stretches beyond the confines of time and space. The shadow in the photographs was not just a specter of the past, it was a herald of a story that continues to unfold, a story that I am but a part of, a story that echoes beyond the frame. We have come to the end of our story. Subscribe and like the video so as not to miss the videos that we will upload in the future. Tell me, what do you think about this story in the comments? I'll see you in the next story.